Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to our first Learning Lab of 2025. So, before we get into today's agenda, we're going to be looking at system checks and updates for the new year, but we'll quickly cover off some introductions and housekeeping before we do so. So, for those that I don't know, my name's Claudia and I head up our Intacct Customer Success team here at Acuity, and I'm joined by Fiona, one of our customer success coaches as well. As we go through this session, there will be an opportunity to add any questions you've got into the question box in your toolbar. So please do pop them in there as soon as they come into your head so you don't forget. And then we will be covering off a Q&A at the end and we'll be picking those up then. The session is also being recorded, so you will get a copy after, so you can refer back to anything we cover off today at a later date if you need to. Okay, so into the agenda for today's session, we are going to be looking at areas that you should be considering as part of a New Year system kind of check and review process. And as we start the new year, it's just a really good opportunity, particularly if you're a system administrator, to complete a bit of a review of the system to maintain and update key areas, really helping to ensure your processes remain accurate and your system security is maintained as well. The session is going to take you through some of the key areas to consider at the start of this new year, but also you can equally review these at any time throughout the year. Often that might be after your year end, for example, whenever that falls. So worth looking at them now and then kind of putting these checks and balances in place at the appropriate time based on what your business timings look like. So we're going to start off by covering off cleaning up users' roles and permissions. Then we're going to look at if you're using approval policies, where you can manage and maintain those. We'll look at creating new reporting periods for the year if you haven't got those set up in the system already. And then we'll finish the second half looking at some budgets and updating and managing those, checking and maintaining credit cards within the system, and also finish off looking at controlling future data transactions, particularly at this time of year where we've got a crossover between 24 and 25, so you know what configuration you've got in place to manage that. So we're going to start off with users' roles and permissions. So I'm going to hand over to Fiona to take you through these first few. Now.
Super. Thanks, Claudia. So now, as Claudia mentioned, now is a really good time to review your company's user list, just to confirm really that firstly, only appropriate users have access to Intacct. Any leavers throughout the year have been made inactive. Details such as email addresses may need to be updated, so just go through and check that all of those details against that user remain correct. Also that they're set up as the correct user type, so there are different types of licenses within the system: business users, employee users, so really just checking that they've got the right license type, and also to know that you are using your subscripted license amounts. So if you're unsure when creating new users what license types you have available, it's best to get in touch with us and we can let you know. And also just to check that you have admin, the admin access is assigned correctly to the correct users. It's always recommended that you have a minimum of 2 admin users within the system. So therefore, if one is on leave or away, you've got another person to cover that. So definitely worth checking who your admin users are and making sure that you're happy with the level of access for them. So we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to, in the same when I do a demo, we're going to look at also roles and permissions. So in addition to the users, you may want to review what roles and permissions you've got set up for a user. Permissions can be user or role based. In most cases, roles are used to easily manage multiple users or groups of user permissions at one time. Most customers have roles based permissions set up. So permissions may need to be updated for when an employee's job changes, or when team members that are providing cover for somebody else who is on leave, they might need their permissions updated to cover that. Also, when there are new releases from Sage that contain new features or additional features, sometimes they come with also associated permission changes, so you may need to update the role to allow for that. There are 2 elements against roles that need to be updated. So you might want to update the permissions assigned to a role that manage a group of users, or you may need to update the permissions on a role for a single user. So it's worth noting here that users can have multiple roles layered on top of each other to increase their level of access, and that you can view the role combination against the user in the user listing, which should make it easier to manage. All right, I'm now going to flick across and show you where you can update users and roles within Intacct. So just bear with me. Okay, you should be able to see my demo screen there. Okay, so for user settings, if you navigate to company, admin, and then users, then this list of users will only be accessible to an admin user. Within here, you can see the user ID, the username, the type of license that they have. So where I mentioned those business and employee license types. And you can also see which users have full admin access. So in here, you can see Claudia has got full admin access. If you wanted to make a change to a user by clicking on edit beside the user, you can come in here and you can see their username, user email address. You can come in here and make a change. Those business license types that I mentioned, they can also be updated in here, and who has full admin privileges can also be added in here. What you've also got in here is the status. So if you've got a user that's now left and needs to be made inactive, you can't delete users in Intacct, but you can make them inactive. Under status, you can change their status from active to inactive. What you also might find is you might have some users that have been struggling, forgotten passwords, or struggled to get into the system, and then when you've checked their status, they're actually set as locked out. You would come in here, you would change their status from locked out to active. If they've been struggling with their password, they can't remember it, you've also got the option down at the bottom of the user to reset their password. Okay, in here you also have the roles that I mentioned, so you can update the roles that a user is assigned to. You've also got against user entities and departments. You can restrict users to entities or remove restrictions from entities, and you can do that by using the plus and the delete options to add or remove any of those restrictions. Okay, so that's that. With roles, just cancel out of there. So we'll take a look at the roles. So the roles is in the same area. If you go to company, admin, and then roles. Again, this is only accessible to an admin, a full admin user. They'll be able to see what roles are assigned in here. If you want to see which users are assigned to a role, you click on role assignment, and it will show you in here which users have been assigned to that role. If you need to update the permissions in a role or change some of the modules by clicking on subscriptions for that role, you can see that it's nicely organized by module. And if you click on permissions by that module, you can see exactly anyone who's assigned to that role will be able to do in that module. So for example, this is the AP manager role, and you can see all the ticks there of everything they have access to within that role. And where there's not a tick, they don't have access to be able to do any of that. So for example, in this role, if you're assigned to this role and against suppliers, you can view and you can add new suppliers, but what you can't do is edit or delete them. Okay. By changing the permissions in the roles, you just need to tick or untick any of those boxes and hit save. Great. Let's just go back to the PowerPoint. Second key area to review is your approval policies and workflow. So you may have approval policies in place for journal entries, AP invoices, AP invoices, AP payments, or maybe even some purchasing transactions. On an annual basis, approval policies should really be reviewed just to confirm that they're accurate and they meet your business needs. Depending on the approval type that you're using, considerations for approval workflows of the changes may include things like adding new employees or updating a user's role if it's changed, updating the value threshold, or any approval tiers if they've also changed, changing department managers. That could, you could have new department managers that may have left a department, so you may need to change some of the approval policies with those department managers. Any changes to your purchasing workflows or new purchasing workflow requirements. And update to the frequency of email notifications for those approvers as well. Okay, so I'm just going to pop back into the system and I'm going to take you through where you can change the approval policies. Update your approval policies. So let me just pop back. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to take you through a scenario. Let's assume that one of the department managers has changed and we need to update the approver on the department. Okay, so first of all, we'll go to just take a look in purchasing, setup and approval policies. And in here, we can see all of the transaction types that have an approval policy assigned to them. Okay, so if we first of all look at purchase order, I can see that the purchase order has a transaction department rule type, meaning that when a purchase order is raised for a department, that department manager will be notified that there is a PO waiting their approval. So if we wanted to change the department manager that's now going to receive those approval notifications, we would come into purchasing, we would come into company, set up departments, find the department that has now changed and click on edit. And in here you have the manager. So we're going to change that to be the new manager. Let's just change it to Mark and hit save. So now Mark will now get any notifications for any purchase orders that's raised for the department 200. Mark also can check in his own preferences that he has been set up for email notifications. So if he was to go into my preferences and scroll down to the notification section under purchasing, that he is going to receive requests and notifications for purchasing approvals. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to take you through is the reporting periods. So now is a really good time to take the opportunity to review any reporting periods and to confirm what reporting periods are available for budgeting, reporting for the new year and any subsequent years. You can set these up at the same time. So reporting periods are set up initially during implementation as part of the configuration of the general ledger. Sage Intacct creates default reporting periods for a 3-year period initially, but over time you'll need to generate further reporting periods as you go through each year. Only a user with the appropriate permissions can create the default reporting periods for the next year. And you can create new reporting periods in 2 ways. So one is the default option. So if you have a standard reporting period, using the default option is the most straightforward route. Or if you don't have standard reporting periods and you use a custom set, you can import those. So I'm now going to show you how you would do that. So to view the existing reporting periods, we're going to go into company, general ledger, and we're going to look at reporting periods. So in here, you can see a list of all the current reporting periods that are created. As I mentioned, you can create new reporting periods using the default option. So this is best to use if you use the standard calendar and you've got standard monthly, quarterly, yearly calendar dates. So to create a standard set of reporting periods, we'd go into company, then we'd go to import data, scroll down until you find the general ledger, and you'll find reporting periods, and you can hit on default there. And to create the default set of periods, you just hit create. What Intacct will do is it will take a look at your latest transaction date in the system, and it will create reporting periods up to and including the year of that last transaction date. For example, if you've got a transaction in the system with a date of October 2027, Intacct will create default reporting periods up to December 2027. Okay. I'm not actually going to create here because then I have to go through and delete, because I wanted to show you how to create custom reporting periods too. So I'm just going to hit close there. So to create the custom ones, first of all, you need to download a template, and you can click on template here. That will download to your Excel. And I've already actually, in advance of today, gone ahead and created a custom template, custom spreadsheet to upload with custom reporting periods on. So once you've created your, completed your spreadsheet with all of your custom periods on, all I've done on this template as well is populated the required fields. So I've put in a name, a header, the start and end dates of each of those custom periods, and selected the whether they're budgetable and their status. Once you've completed all of that information, save your file as a CSV. And then if we come back into Intacct, you would hit here, import, browse and pick up your file. This is just check I've got the CSV here. Okay, select the date format. So actually, when I populated my spreadsheet, I actually used an American date format. So that's correct in there, and the email address is in there as well. So that shows, should there be any issues with my import, I will be emailed with details of what the issue was. So I'm going to hit on import there. That will run through, and that's what we like to see as a message to say that that's been successfully imported. And I will also get an email just letting me know that's also successfully imported those 4 records. I hit done there, and now if we go back to our reporting periods, you should be able to see there's my new custom reporting period. It's as easy as that. Okay, that's everything from me. So I'm now going to pass you back to Claudia, who is going to take you through a few more checks that you can carry out within Intacct. Okay, let's just give us a moment while we switch our screens back.
Brilliant.
Let me just...
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my screen.
Yep.
Brilliant. So the first one I'm going to take you through is updating budgets. So you may need to add a new budget to the system at this time of year. This can be done at any point in the year, in line with your business requirements after year end, or if you're rebudgeting at any point within the year. But we'll take this opportunity to remind you where you can update your budgets, adding a new budget, and also thinking about updating budgets that might be used in financial reports if you have a set budget used within those. So I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint and into Sage Intacct quickly, and we'll start to have a look at that. So to access your budgets, you're going to go into your application menu, select budgets, and go into the budget repository here. This is where you can view all the budgets that you've got in the system. And you can see I've only got budgets up until 2024 here. So if I wanted to add a budget for 2025 and I wanted to start afresh and add a brand new one, I'm just going to click on add here, and I'm going to create the budget repository. So the container that you're going to put all of your data into, I'm just going to give it a budget ID. I'm going to create a brand new budget, so I'm going to leave it with that, and then I'm just going to hit save. You could use an existing budget to create this budget from, and if you did that, you just need to select this second box and then select the budget in the drop down that you want to base it on. For example, I could select 2024 and then update the periods that I want to budget for. But I'm going to stick with creating a new budget for now. So if I just click save, that is going to take me back to there and give me a budget repository container to import our data into. So then once I've got that, I can look at importing our data. So from this screen, we can import our import templates just by going to import, and similarly to how Fiona imported the reporting periods, you can do the same here. Interestingly, you will need to make sure all those reporting periods are created for the budget periods that you are adding your budget for. So follow those steps first and make sure they exist and are selected as budgetable reporting periods. If you haven't done this before, you can go into the company import data and go and scroll down to select your budget import template. So we're going to scroll all the way down into this general ledger section and download the template here. You then populate all of your budgets by GL code and dimension, adding in your budget ID that you have called that budget we created a moment ago into that. One thing you'll need to consider if you're doing this method is that you will need to pick up those reporting periods as your column headers, and you'll need to enter them into the import template in exactly the same format as you created them, because otherwise it will error when you go to import it. One way to avoid this, particularly if you've already got budgets within your system, is to go back into the budgets module and run the budget report. If we use the budget report, we can pull out all of these reporting period headers and use that as your import template. So for example, if I say I'm going to do this for a 2-year period, just so that I can look at last year's data as well at the same time, and say, let's go from January 2024 all the way till December 25 in this report. I'm going to select the budget that I want to base this on and I want to pull through. So I want to look at last year's budget, so we'll see the data from last year. And I want to double check that I've got all the dimension values that I'm going to set a budget against, and then just use this use CSV importable format to make sure it's in the right format. If we just view this first of all, what we can see here is this is going to give us kind of very familiar budget import kind of template, but it's putting through all of our last year's data and then also giving us all of the headings for next year. So these are our reporting periods that we're going to want to populate for next year. If we just export that from here as a CSV, I've got one from earlier, you can then really easily update your budget ID. So I'm just going to make sure that's the new budget that I want to update, so the 2025 budget. And I can either delete last year's, or I can use those as a basis and copy them into the 2025, and then just import, once I've populated them, the 2025 reporting periods from the import option within the budget repository here. So once I've done that, saved that as a CSV, I can then come back and import it into here. And as long as I put the right budget ID into that template, then it will load the budget into the right budget container here. So that's if you are adding a new budget. Some people may be using a master budget, and they might be using a master budget against all of their reports. So rather than creating a new budget, you might just want to update your master budget. If you do this, it's highly recommended that before you update that budget in the same way as you've just done from an import perspective, that you just create a duplicate version of that budget and save it as your prior year budget date, just so that you can refer back to that if you wish. And if you just go into the budget, edit it, and click duplicate, you can save that as a copy before you go in and then overwrite your master budget with this year's data. If you are using individual budgets though, then you may need to go in and check some of your reporting that is using that budget. So if we just go into our financial reports and have a look at an example. So this P&L at the top has got an actual versus budget set up. So there's using a budget column within the report. And obviously we want to make sure that's looking at the right budget figures as we go into this year. So if we go into the edited format of this report and select the column tab, we can then have a look at which budget's being used in the budget column. So here we can see we've got a budget being selected here, and I can just pick up the budget that I want to use moving forward and then click save. And then when I run this report in the future, it's going to use the budget that we've entered into 2025 for this report. Equally, you may have reports that have prior year budgets in as well. So make sure you have updated any of those if you've got set budgets. If you're using a master budget and you've just updated that, that budget that already existed, then you can maintain that budget within those reports. So that covers off most of our budgeting. And whilst I'm in the system, one of the other areas that's also worth checking at this time of year, as just a bit of a reminder, is your credit card setup and just making sure all the data is accurate, being aware of expiration dates and that kind of thing. And we can view those really easily within cash management. Coming into your credit cards, we just go into this entity because I've got credit cards set up in here. Go into your credit cards. You can view these or edit the data. And there's a selection of editable fields in here that you can maintain if necessary, and just worth double checking and being aware of when those expiration dates might be coming up so that we don't have any interruption in your use of the system when you're considering kind of processing around credit cards. Okay, the final section we're going to have a quick look at today is controlling future dated transactions. So at this time of year, it's really easy for a user to accidentally post a future dated transaction as the user's wrapping up December 2024. So when you're posting in December 24, quite easy to miss when you enter a date, updating the year within that date format to post, and it will automatically pick up 2025. So quite easy to accidentally post into a future period when you don't mean to. But there are controls available within the system to make sure you're managing that and controlling those properly. And these controls are available within GL, within the Cash Management AP and AR modules, and will really help you just to reduce any incorrect postings as we cross over the years. So there are, across these modules, 3 main configuration options that you can use to control future dated postings. They all have slightly different terminology in their options, but they all ultimately do the same thing. So you have 3 options. You allow and warn. So this will let a user know that they're attempting to post into the future, but it will ultimately allow them to post once they've selected that warning. You've got don't allow, so this will prevent postings in a future dated period, or you've got allow, which does nothing and just allows you to post. So that's not recommended, particularly this time of year. So I'm going to jump into the system and have a look at where you would double check what you've got set up and how you might need to change that if you don't think it kind of covers you and gives you the control that you're looking for. So we're going to start off by having a quick look at cash management and where the control is within that element of the system. So if we go into the cash management application module, setup and configuration, within this top accounting section, you'll see If you're an administrator, you will see if you're posting transaction into a future period, you get these 3 options that we just covered off. So worth reviewing that, selecting one that suits your needs, and then clicking save to update that. Similarly, if we look at AP and AR, they also have this option. Again, go into your module, setup and configuration as an admin user. You'll have permission to do this. Slightly different in that it is actually posted in this threshold section. So scroll down a little bit and you'll see these same options. If posting transactions into a future period, show warnings, do not allow transactions to be created, or do nothing. So again, review this one, and the same is also available in the general ledger. So worth checking all 4 of these areas to ensure the treatment of future dated postings is aligned to your needs moving forward. Most of the things that we have covered off today, you do need admin permissions for. So if you're not an administrator, definitely worth having a conversation with the users that are, and making sure that these things are being considered and looked at, just to make sure that you don't get any surprises, and then you're ready for the new year, and everything is updated. That is it from a checks and maintenance perspective. So we'll move into the Q&A section. I'm not sure if there's been any questions yet, Fiona. Have a quick look.
No questions have come through just yet.
Do you have any, pop them in the question box in the toolbar that should pop up at the side for you. Or if you can take yourself off mute and ask them, that's also fine. But if you do think of anything after this session, or when you go back and review the video, then do give us a shout. Myself and Fiona are more than happy to take you through any of these sections again, or if you've got any specific questions based on your setup, then do let us know. Give it just a minute just to see if anything does pop up. No, I don't think we're going to get any today. So yeah, do shout if you do have any. We'll just move into our wrap-up slide.
Right. Yeah, as Claudia said, if you do have any questions that come through after today's session, then please do drop us an email. My email address is on screen now, so feel free to drop me an email, or if you have Claudia's and you want to speak to Claudia, then contact Claudia. So as Claudia mentioned at the start, you will also receive a copy of today's Learning Lab. You'll receive a recording of it via email, so please keep a lookout for that. If you do not receive that, please do let me know. We'll get that sent out to you. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future topics of Learning Labs that you'd like to see us cover, then we really welcome any feedback. So please do let us know of things that you'd like to see in the future. Our next Learning Lab is going to be on the 23rd of January, and we're going to be covering building your own dashboards in Sage Intacct. It'd be great to see some of you there. It should be a really good session. So do keep a lookout for the invite to join that session. That should be coming to you in the next few days. We really hope that you found today's session useful, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks again for all your time, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your Thursday. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.